Go.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Introduction to Biblical Archaeology. My name is Joe Perry. Just to be specific, I'm not the Joe Perry that's in the band with Arrowhead, so I get asked that a lot. And another disclaimer, I'm not a professional archaeologist, and I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express last night. But I did stay at a cottage at the best Sukkot feast site in the United States. So. All right, so this is Introduction to Archaeology, and a lot of you have a lot of knowledge about archaeology, but let's just define the subject first. Archaeology is the scientific study of material remains such as fossils.
There's something wrong with the thing here. We over here, we can't understand a word he's saying.
Yeah.
Speakers are messed up, something.
I think it's because everybody's got to be quiet. Try it again.
Okay.
I'm going to come to you.
Archaeology is the scientific study of material remains such as fossils, artifacts, and monuments of past human life and activities. Okay. So what is biblical archaeology? Biblical archaeology is a branch of biblical studies and interdisciplinary pursuit that seeks to utilize the pertinent results of archaeological research to elucidate the historical and cultural right setting of the Bible. Archaeology can be used to prove facts from the Bible. Okay? It can corroborate biblical events and places one more piece of evidence to confirm the truth of the Bible. This is saying from Psalm 85, truth springs from the earth. Right? That's what we get the archaeology. Sites and facts spring from the earth, and hopefully God looks down from heaven and is pleased with it. Okay. Now, there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things we can't find from archaeology that haven't been discovered yet. But over 50 figures in the Bible have been identified through artifacts or letters. And I don't know if you can see the list up there really clearly, but this is figures from the northern kingdom of Israel, mostly kings from the divided kingdom have been identified. And we also have a number from the southern kingdom of Israel, Judah, David's kingdom, after his time. And some of the folks are kings, but some are also people who worked in administrations. In the Bible mentions some figures who, were like administrative folks for the kings, and they get their names have been found. And actually, there's also over 200 names have been discovered in archaeological digs, but names that have been used that we know were names that people had in Israel, but whether or not they're the actual people they're referring to that are in the Bible, we don't know. We just know that they have their names. Okay, so it's kind of interesting that archaeologists sometimes they can be a little bit of a curmudgeonly bunch, and they're not really, and they can be skeptical about the Bible. Okay, so they never found anything about the patriarchs, in an archaeological dig. There's no evidence for the patriarchs in archaeological digs. That will lead some people to say, well, they're just a made-up story. But, no evidence, just because you can't find evidence of something doesn't mean that thing doesn't exist, right? And we know better, don't we? We know that every word in the Bible is true. And so there are even some folks who are saying that Solomon, David, and Saul, there was no united kingdom. They're just made-up stories also. Well, there's an inscription. You can read that. It says, the house of David. This fragmented 9th century BCE inscription from Tel Dan, which is in northern Galilee, appears to commemorate the victory of an Aramean king, that's an area in Syria that they came from, over the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. The 13 partially preserved lines of early Aramaic written in Paleo-Hebrew script mentioning both the house of David, and the king of Israel. This marked the first time the name David has been found in the ancient inscription outside the Bible. So tell me there was no such thing as King David when you got an inscription that says House of David, which means, the line of kings that came after them. Just like Queen Elizabeth is part of the House of Windsor. So there's confirmation from the Bible. All right, let's look at a little bit about archaeology. And to start off with, archaeology really started in the early 19th century when people started, trying to find things. Israel at that time was under the Turks. The Ottoman Turks controlled Israel. Israel's been, ever since the Syrians first conquered Israel, Northern Kingdom in 721 and the Southern Kingdom in 586. Ever since then, they've been occupied by one force after another. Then there came the Babylonians, the Persians, the Romans, then it went over to the Byzantines, and the Muslims conquered it. Then Turks took over, several types of different Turks. So finally, in the 19th century, the Ottoman Empire was in control of Israel. So you have to, so it was about the 19th century when folks started looking at, hey, there's all these places that are historical, maybe we ought to start examining some of them. So the first was, why they did it though, was mainly because they were looking for treasure. They wanted to find coins and artifacts and things and, sell them. Most of the early stuff that still was found was sent back to different museums around Europe. People just didn't, and there was no science to it. They would just dig stuff up and they didn't follow any scientific method at first. So, the provenance of the thing was just lost. Where was it? Where was it from exactly? What period of history? So it was kind of chaos. One of the first interesting stories is sort of the first females to get involved. We don't want to get ladies out of this. So we have a British noblewoman named Lady Hester Lucy Stanhope. She went over and started digging in the Philistine city of Ascalon looking for treasure. Well, she didn't find any treasure, but she found this giant 9-foot statue of a Philistine god, and was so appalled by it that instead of shipping it back to the British Museum, she took a hammer and knocked it to pieces. That did not enamor her to her fellow treasure hunters or the museums, so she kind of goes down in infamy a little bit. But the first, what we might call scientific study of the area was conducted by an American named Edward Robinson. He was not an archaeologist per se, but he was a geographer. And he's made, over a couple-year period, he made trips to Israel, just identifying places, which is not as easy as you might think. You have to know Arabic. The Arabs and Muslims have been there for well over 1,000 years at this point. They've renamed a lot of places. So, such as the city of Acre, which the Crusaders, you might remember, under Richard the Lionheart had conquered, had turned into the name Acre. Well, if you don't know that, you don't know where Acre is. There's a lot of other examples I could give. So he knew Arabic and he was able to identify a lot of places to help us out. And everybody knows where Jerusalem is. It's been inhabited. But say the city of Ai. Remember the story with Joshua when one of the fellows, Achan, took treasure and they tried to conquer the city of Ai, but he'd taken the treasure, so God was not with the Israelites at that time. And they lost the battle, and they had to finally stone Achan to get back right with the Lord. Well, where was I? Okay, those places don't have signposts up, and most of them don't yet. And if they're not inhabited anymore, abandoned for centuries, even thousands of years, how do you know where it is? So there's been about 5 or 6 places that have been put forward as the city of Ai, and archaeologists are arguing to this day which one's the right one. You may never find out. But anyway, so the warrant sent by the Palestine Exploration Fund to excavate the land of Israel and Jerusalem. He was in, and so he did his geographical work. Okay. Now the first really archaeologist, you might call it, to go there was Charles Warren. He's an Englishman, and he too sent by the Palestine Exploration Fund to excavate in Jerusalem. He was a royal engineer, so he kind of knew what he was doing. In October 1867, he entered the Gihon Spring. Now, the Gihon Spring is in a valley below Jerusalem, the area that we later know as the city of David. And there was the water source for that. So he entered the Gihon Spring again to investigate the underground tunnels surrounding the spring that brought the water into Jerusalem itself. And there he discovered a vertical shaft that led to a man-made tunnel. Let's put that up there. It's good. They didn't have the nice railing at that time. That's been added later. This is the shaft that leads down to the tunnels where they could get water. Like when the city is under siege by the Babylonians, and you want to, keep the water for your people, you have to go down there and pick the water. You can take your buckets down there and get your water and bring it back up. Not an easy thing, but you got to do what you got to do. Well, he discovered this, okay? And this was the first excavation of the city of David. Okay, now we're going to get back to the treasure room. I was hoping that this presentation will be both informative but also entertaining. Here comes what I hope will be the entertaining part. I like to call it the hunt for Solomon's treasure. Okay. This man's name is Walter G. Ventus. He's a surveyor, an author, and a translator, and he believed that he had cracked a code in the book of Ezekiel that described the location of the Ark of the Covenant and the treasure of Solomon. Okay, and he was and the location he thought where it was on the Temple Mount. So he doesn't have any money to go over to Israel himself for doing things. So he has friends in England, and he goes to try to raise money. He even approached Winston Churchill to Baton on an expedition, but Churchill said no, thank you. Thought he was, like a lot of people apparently thought he was, a crackpot, which, as we'll see. So eventually he did get a man named Montague Parker, who was the son of an English nobleman, the Earl of Morley. Parker agreed to back him. He had better contacts than Ventus did, and he was able to raise $125,000, which is a huge sum. We're talking 1909. Okay, and they went over there. Now, remember, this is on the Temple Mount, right? And it's in Turkish-held territory. So what he had to do, he went to Constantinople and talked to some Turkish officials there and promised them 50% of everything he found if they let him go dig in Israel. But he still had to keep this thing quiet, okay? But as we'll see, he's able to get some young comrades interested in going, so he'll have a working force. Because, and he gets a man named Clarence Wilson to take them all over there on a yacht to the port of Jaffa. And they got to Jerusalem in 1909, and there they prepared to dig. Why do they have to dig? Because they didn't have permission to get on the Temple Mount itself. They had to dig up underneath and come into the Temple Mount from another area. So they're going to have to tunnel their way into this place and hopefully find this treasure. Okay, well, how do they know where to do this? Well, Juventus had consulted a clairvoyant who kept telling them where to go and where to dig. Okay, where to excavate this. Okay? So Parker was basically in charge of digging, reopened one of the shafts that Warren had dug, and began going through tunnels, hoping to break through to the Temple Mount. Because, as I said, they didn't have permission to dig on the Temple Mount itself. Well, the tunneling work took forever. Rain kept flooding the tunnels, making the excavation difficult. And Parker and his men finally gave it up that winter and sailed back to England. They returned back in the summer of 1910. The Turkish commissioners that were overseeing this got disgusted and they quit. And the authorities in Jerusalem gave Parker until the summer of 1911 to complete the work. They worked all summer and winter looking for the secret passage that would take them to the supposed treasure. Let me put Parker's picture up here. There you go, there's Parker. And they looked for the secret passage that would take them to the supposed treasure. With only 4 months left to dig, Parker realized he had to change his tactics. His tunnels were getting him nowhere. So, Asmay Bey, the Turkish governor of the territory, was interested in digging, and for a bribe of $25,000, Parker was allowed to dig on the Temple Mount itself. Apparently Turkish officials were really easy to bribe. Give them some money, they'll let you do anything. Okay, so the Temple Mount still a verboten place. So at night, Parker and his crew would disguise themselves as Arabs and sneak out of the mountain and dig in an area the clairvoyant said the treasure would be. They kept digging night after night, but no treasure. Okay. So now, April 1911, Parker's time is running out. He's getting desperate. So he decides that he will go and dig here. Well, you're all familiar with that mosque. That's the mosque. It was there back then as it is now. The dome of the, it's going to go down into the dome of the rock. That's the second picture there. That's the actual rock. That's the rock where supposedly why this mosque is there. Because that rock, from on that rock is where supposedly Mohammed ascended to heaven with his steed. In Jewish tradition, this is Mount Moriah, where Abraham was to sacrifice Isaac. But as it's controlled by the Muslims now. And they don't want anybody on it, just like today, Jews aren't allowed up there today. Well, the same thing was back then, no one was allowed. But anyway, Parker was also able to bribe the curator of the mosque to look the other way while he went in there. Okay, on the night of April 17th, Parker and his team entered the mosque. And they went to a cavern underneath that rock and proceeded to dig. So they're sure they were going to find the treasure. Well, the best laid plans often go astray. A mosque attendant planning to sleep on the mount heard noises and entered the mosque to investigate. Running into Parker's crew, he shrieked in horror and bolted from the mosque and hastened to the city to expose the sacrilege. The jig was up. Parker and his party fled. While Jerusalem broke out in riots, Parker's group made it to Jaffa. With wild rumors that the treasure hunters had stolen the Ark of the Covenant, the sword of Muhammad, and the crown and ring of Solomon, officials in Jaffa detained Parker and searched their baggage. They threatened to hold the men until they got instructions from Constantinople. Parker suggested that the Turkish officials come aboard Wilson's yacht to talk over the situation. He and his men got permission to board the yacht in order to prepare it for their visitors. They didn't wait around for the officials. They put up steam, motored out of the harbor, and returned to England grateful to have escaped alive. So thus ended the treasure hunt. Juventus faded into obscurity. Parker, though, would survive World War I, which would soon become the fifth Earl of Morley. Okay, so, it's interesting, though, how I think the Lord even uses things that are crazy, bad things, for good. The second man, picture of man that's Parker on the left there, the man on the right, is actually a French priest. The Catholic Church had a presence in Jerusalem at this time, and that's Father Louis-Henri Vincent. He was an archaeologist, one of the very first of the archaeologists. And he quickly, when he realized what Parker was doing, digging all his tunnels, he quickly protested his unscientific methods. The church insisted Parker take this and onto his team and employ a real archaeologist in his excavations. They didn't want him just destroying everything, go over those tunnels with whatever they might find. So Vincent worked in the tunnels. And he actually discovered that the tunnel which Warren shaft, which we saw earlier, led to, was actually Hezekiah's tunnel that, if you read 2 Chronicles 32, verse 30, he dug from the Gihon spring to get water into Jerusalem when the Babylonians were besieging the city. So, and realized that at this time it had been thought, where was the city of David? And the thought would have been that it was on Mount Zion, which is to the left of the area where the city actually was, and the Temple Mount above it. But it's actually on a place called the Ophel. It's O-P-H-E-L. I've got a map. I think it's later on. I'll show that to you. So it's right on the Temple Mount, as the map shows. So great discovery that they actually finally knew where the city of David had been during his time. So great discovery was made, something good coming out of something bad. So we're getting to the time now when treasure hunting is no longer in vogue. Thank goodness. making a mess out of everything. And really getting into modern archaeological methods. I thought I had a pointer that I could use on the TV, but it doesn't work with the TV, so I just have to look. This is I believe the city of Hazor. It's one of the Israelite cities that fell uninhabited after a while, but while it was inhabited for centuries, 23 different cities were built on this site. 23. The city kept being destroyed, and new folks would come along, rebuild it, and what you did is you built on the ruins of what went before. So the city gets higher and higher and higher, okay? And that's what we have here. You might be, if you can tell, there's some of this, the different areas from the different times are put down there on the bottom. You see they've got marked on paper going up from the bottom there. So you can see how high the thing was. You know, I should probably explain for those who might not know. The newest area is always going to be on top. If you want to get to whatever you're looking for, you got to dig down bottom. If you want to get to the time of King David, you're going to have to go down into the hill. And it always gets built up because of one civilization on top of another, so it gets higher and higher. And one problem is when you do this, say you just can't, probably don't want to take the whole top off, because once you've taken say the latest 19th century or 18th century, if whoever was the last ones up there, you just destroy that. So so what they do, they would oftentimes just one part of the tell would go down maybe to the Babylonians, the next one might come down to the Persian age, another one might come down to the time of the Israelite kings, just so that you can preserve some of each civilization. It's one thing though. This is actually called Tel Hazor. Most of the places now have uninhabited places that have the word Tel in front of them. Tel is just simply a Hebrew word meaning hill. Because of course, the higher up you go on it, the easier it is to defend. Whoever might be coming to attack you, he's got a nice defensive position built up too. So that was a benefit of building one on top of the other. I'm going to look at one more archaeologist, probably the best known archaeologist. First off, I'll say that, 1917, the British Army during World War I kicked the Turks out of Israel. They recaptured Jerusalem. And so they ruled it as a mandate up until 1948. So it was a lot easier to come in there, get folks to be able to come in there and do archaeological work than before. Some things were similar under their rule. But so what we had at that time, okay, first off, here's some tools of the trade. If you're going to be an archaeologist, you have to be able to use certain tools, trowels. And I've done a little archaeological work on down in Louisiana. And it's not the most fun work. It's one of the most tedious things you'll ever do. You're not finding anything, because what you have is you use brushes and trowels, and you just brush areas off. You have this large box with wire mesh really close together, so everything goes into the box. Somebody's got to shake that box, shake out all the little dirt pieces. So all that's left is anything you might want to save, like pieces of pottery from broken jars or something, and everything. Then somebody has to get a wheelbarrow, haul off all the dirt, and get it out of the way. Somebody has to catalog all the little pieces of pottery. Everything's meticulously recorded. That's why you have tape measures and stuff. You're always measuring off. So you want to make an exact report of that site, where everything came from, and exactly what you were doing and where you found everything. I remember I had some friends who were archaeologists, and I went into, and one of the fellows for his master's thesis was digging in a farmer's field. I come across an arrowhead. I pick it up and I go on, and hey, I found this arrowhead. Well, you can keep it now. It's not going to do him any good because he took it out of the sand. So he wasn't pleased. So, but I got an arrowhead out of it. So. Anyway, represented. So it's it's scientific, and this scientific method started now to coming into focus. Okay, this is you can see this is a city called Lachish. It's actually the second largest city in Jerusalem at the time of the Syrian invasion. If you remember the story where a Syrian official went up to Hezekiah to the city of Jerusalem. He's been boasting how the Syrian God was better. If you think your God's going to save you, it's not going to happen. Well, they were besieging Lachish when this happened. This is the second largest city in Jerusalem. In Israel at that time. It only has 14 layers of civilization, 14 cities built one on top of the other, and it's pretty hard to see how high that tell is there. They've gone. This is when they've been doing some work on it already. Okay, but that was one of the first places that folks went through to do that. This is okay. Now this is a sad story. James Starkey. Archaeology, when you're working in Palestine, you've got Muslims and you've got Jewish folks starting to come in. The British are letting some in there. Well, the Muslims back in the 30s were no more interested in having Jews settle there in that area than they are today. So Starkey was working at Lachish on the dig there in 1938, and they were opening a new archaeological museum in Jerusalem. So he took a taxi, had some taxi drive him over to Jerusalem so he could be there for the opening presentation. Well, some Arab terrorists surrounded his car, killed his Arab driver for doing that, and saw that he had a beard, thought he was Jewish too, and murdered him. So there's a martyr to archaeology. It's sad, but of course things got better. Let's go. Here's a picture of Lachish, and I wish this is where I had my pointer, but what happens is that you can see the city as it looked before, and as it would have looked back in the Syrian times. Over there, sort of like the right center is the city gate. I don't know if you can tell that. You see a road kind of like going around the curve off to the left there. There's the city gate, that one big area that looks like it's coming down. I always just read the Bible, city gate laws. Well, they just had this little gate post, just swung it open. And, people would go and sit there at the city gate. They just had this little gate post, and they would go and, conduct business there. That's not quite. These places were elaborate affairs. You might go through one portal into an area that actually had rooms for guards and for people to conduct their business. And then there'd be the second portal, and you pass into the city proper itself. So that's how it passes. So when you read the Bible and you visualize the gate, just, you realize you've got a pretty complex area there. We're much more practical for doing business and conducting transactions, such as Ruth and Boaz taking on Ruth from his other descendant who didn't want her. That business conducted at a city gate. Okay, anyway, that's what it would have looked like in that time. And by the way, these cities, it's not like Nashville or even Murfreesboro or I don't know how many folks you got in Paducah, but these cities, maybe 30, 40,000 people. They're small. They're small areas, not at any one time, not huge populations. I remember the Bible said. Was talking about Nineveh when Jonah went there and mentioned they had 120,000 inhabitants and made it look like that was like a huge place. So things are not quite as large back in those days as they are today. Okay, now it's 1948. Israel is working to win its independence. This is Yigael Yadin, probably the most famous Israeli archaeologist. Now, he doesn't look like an archaeologist there, does he? Because his first job was to be an officer in the Israeli army during that War of Independence. Okay? Yadin, his parents were Polish Jews who immigrated to Palestine in 1912. Yadin means he will judge and he will make law. So, he wanted to study archaeology, okay? But there was this war going on. But he had studied biblical battles and ancient Roman roads. And he was a general, and he helped plan the campaigns. He captured an Egyptian general and his brigade by moving his men along an old Roman road that he discovered. So he used archaeology to win a battle. When he hadn't been involved in military, Yadin was following his father's footsteps and studying archaeology. In 1952, left the military and took up his chosen profession. That military, there he is, but he's still in the military. He's actually became chief of staff of the whole Israeli army from 1949 to 1952. And then we see him later. Us old timers might remember Moshe Dayan during the 67 and 73 wars, the fellow with the eye patch there on the left. Here is Moshe Dayan. So, and later on, he entered politics. Here's an archaeologist. He also became the deputy prime minister of Israel, the number 2 man in the government at the time. So, but archaeology was his first love. So he returned to archaeology. There is his little cowboy hat. That's him. That's him in his chosen profession, archaeology. He came to archaeology, was a stalwart in his field. He worked for 5 seasons at Hazor, got that dig started. There he is with another famous archaeologist at Hazor, Ani Haroni. And I'll show you the next one. Yes, there are lady archaeologists, even back in the 50s and 60s. That's Trudy Douglas. She got her start under Yadin at Hazor. Trudy became the world's foremost expert on Philistines. Well, she dug a number of Philistine cities up and wrote several books, and just died not too long ago. She's the world's foremost authority on the Philistines. Okay, so what did Yadin do during his time? Well, he worked at someone's worked there. That's at Hazor. After it's been dug up some, he did a lot of work there. He also, a place we all know, Masada. He was the one who led the archaeological digs at Masada. And he also worked with the Dead Sea Scrolls. He was instrumental in getting some of those scrolls. He and his dad bought a number of scrolls from, at that time, the Bedouin who found them back in those caves, took them to merchants and sold them, as antiquities. And you could just go in a store and buy them, I guess. And he made a deal to buy most of them. And Yadin found one himself, the longest one, which is called the Temple Scroll, which was planned for the Essenes temple, what they would do at the temple if they were able to get charge of it and change things. So that's the longest temple scroll. He always wanted to go back. Hazor still needed a lot more work. He always wanted to go back there, but he never was able to. But he did do one thing that proved something and helped prove something in the Bible. Okay, that's at Hazor, and that's the remnants of the city gate at Hazor. There's a line in the Bible, 1 Kings 9:15. It says, "And this is the reason of the levy which King Solomon raised to build the house of Adonai, and Hazor, and Megiddo, and Gezer." Now Megiddo is, we know today is Armageddon. And the city of Gezer. So what he did, those 2 places have been dug up too. And if you look at this city gate, a lot of it's been destroyed, so that's all that was left. That was stone on stone. But if you go to all 3 places, you'll see that all 3 had the same city gates. Exactly the same design. What does the Bible say? King Solomon built all 3 of them. So there's proof that Bible verse is correct. Okay. All right. Yeah, there's the Bible verses for it. Okay, we're going to look at one city. We could look at Hazor, we could look at Lachish, but it would take so long. We don't have enough. I want to do something that was short, but also shows you the puzzles you sometimes have to solve in archaeology. This is says here, King Solomon also built a fleet of ships at Ezion Gabor, which is near Elath on the shore of the Red Sea in the land of Edom. And Hiram was the king of Lebanon, if you remember, who helped David and Solomon build their palaces and the temple. Who sent his servants with the fleet, who knew the sea, along with the servants of Solomon. They went to Ophir and took 420 talents of gold from there and brought it to King Solomon. So one problem archaeologists wanted to find, because it was lost, where was Eziongeber? Where was it? Okay. So we're going to see if we can solve that mystery. Okay. We do know King Solomon controlled a sliver of land on the Red Sea. It says here, here's another quote. For the king had ships which fled to Tarshish with the service of 5 every 3 years. The ships were bringing back gold and silver, ivory, and apes and peacocks. I would love to see how they got the apes on the ships and got them to Israel. But here's a map. I'm sorry, my pointer again. This is an area on the Red Sea at the foot of Mount Sinai. Okay? Today this area is known as the Gulf of Eilat in Israel, the Gulf of Aqaba, if you're a Jordanian name for it. The waterway provides access to the east coast of Africa and the Indian subcontinent. So it's thought here that his port would have been somewhere in this area. Okay? Now, for many centuries, Egyptians had control of this area and benefited from trade routes they established. Once Israel took over the land from the Edomite, Hiram and Solomon established their own trade routes. And Philo of Byblos, quoting a Phoenician historian, says Hiram contributed enough timber to build 10 ships for Solomon. That's that. Let's see. Here's a quote from the Bible that shows that. He put garrisons in Edom. God, all Edom put garrisons, and all the Edomites became servants to David. And Adonai gave victory to David, wherever so he went, showing that Israel eventually took over that land from the Edomites and they controlled it, so they could have that port. Okay, so where exactly though was it? Okay, since the early 19th century, explorers have been intrigued with the idea of locating Eziongeber. But it wasn't until 1938 that an archaeological claim for the location of the fort could be made. Nelson Gluck, American archaeologist, announced he had found Eziongeber. He was convinced of the location due to his excavation of a place called, here's the Arab name, Tel El Khalifa, a small mountain just off the shore of the Gulf of Eilat and Aqaba. Okay, and there's a general view of his excavation there. Luke dug there for many years. He published his findings in 1959. He believed he found a large copper smelting plant facility which he felt was the source of King Solomon's wealth and the location of the seaport. And he also found some neat artifacts. There's a ring that supposedly belonged to King Jotham, Jotham, one of the kings of Israel during the divided monarchy. King of Judah. God, you always get your names correct. For the next 20 years, after 1958, nearly every book on biblical archaeology went along with his claims. But not everybody agreed with he found Eziongeber. There's some more artifacts that they found at his city. Okay. Another man named Bernard Rothenberg, who worked with Gluck, did his own excavation of the site and concluded Gluck was wrong. I always like astronomy as well. It's one of my interests. A man named Carl Sagan once had a quote that sheer genius is no guarantee against being dead wrong. So Gluck apparently, what Gluck had thought was a smelting furnace was actually a grain storage facility. The red color of the walls that he found led him to think the copper was there. Wasn't due to the copper color, were caused by a fire. And where were the piles of slag that smelting of copper would have caused? We had large piles there. Go back one. That's those are Edomite vessels and pottery, broken pottery jar there. That was found there after the time of Solomon, showing that why would that have been there? Why would that have been there at that time if the Israelites were there? Okay, so now Rothenberg's claims made Gluck renounce his ideas. He said, "Okay, I guess I was wrong." we're still looking for it. Okay, it's still missing, and we don't know where it is. This kind of thing happens in archaeology all the time. You know, different ideas. You know, people move forward, and theories are proven wrong. Okay, so where was it? So here's a map of the coastline. On the far left there is the mainland. You see that little island there on the right. Okay. So the coastline itself is sandy beach and shallow. Okay, and no savvy naval commander merchantman would ever use that as a harbor. There's no place to put your boats and ships in and be safe. So where was the port then? Well, way back in the 19th century, a traveler suggested the island of Jezerot Faram as a candidate. That's the island you're seeing there on the right. The name means Pharaoh's Island, because the Egyptians controlled it at one time. Today it's called Coral Island, even though it's composed of granite. So, anyway, okay. It's a small island. It's only 1,000 by 200 feet. But there's a picture of it looking from the mainland on the island to the island. Okay, so a man named Alexander Flinders, an archaeologist himself, and he's an underwater archaeologist. That's a thing that exists. He did some diving around the island and found this. That's a picture of the island harbor. It's a low seawall around the island. He noted that existence of a small harbor when he was doing his underwater diving, and he turned up pottery there. Okay? The sea in the area was relatively calm, which would make for natural anchorage. Okay? It was the only natural anchorage in that whole area of the Gulf. The seawall was well built and even included towers. See a tower? There's one of the towers you can show. Why? For defensive purposes. Okay? And also the folks can stay there when they're on the island. Okay? Anyway, let's go back just a bit. See, up there in that harbor, there was a pool with a bar that separated from the sea, but for a very narrow channel for ships to get in and out. Masonry blocks lining the sides of the channel showed it was an artificially constructed small harbor. Okay? 2 underwater mounds of collapsed building stones led Flinders to believe that there remains the mooring piers often found in harbor entrances. So, it's hard to see in this picture, but this is a picture of an underwater jetty. The partially underwater jetty is like a small pier that would extend out into the ocean. So they found 2 of these jetties made of stone that were sticking out into the water from the mainland beach. There's a second picture. You can see that a little better. It leads out into some water, and you can see it even under the water. You can see that it still extends out there. I'm sorry I don't have my pointer to work with this. So you can point these things out together. But although a lot of the stonework is missing, the southernmost jetty measures 46 feet by 19 feet. The northernmost jetty is above sea level for part of its length, and from the air one can follow its underwater path. The purpose of the jetties is clear. They were used to help ships transport merchandise from the island anchorage to the mainland. The goods could then be caravanned to populated areas such as Jerusalem. Though these jetties postdate Solomon's time, there's further proof that a working harbor was located there. Okay, so what they would do, the main ship would come from wherever, unload on the island, then they put the goods in smaller boats and then send them back to the mainland, and then as they caravan them up to Israel. Okay, so now there's no signpost or inscription at the site stating this was Ezion Geber. Now, one wishes that one had invented signposts that had been invented back in those days, because it would help us to identify sites all over the world. If we go on, we can see that, okay, so-and-so is here, so that's what this is. Okay. Nevertheless, pottery has been found at the site that dates to the time of King Solomon. And evidence of even earlier Egyptian occupation has been found. If not the island of Jezreel, where else would it be? There's no other place in the area that conforms to the biblical description. So this is how Solomon and his kingdom conducted trade with foreign lands. So we have another exciting revelation, the archaeological history of ancient Israel, as once again the Bible has proven true. King Solomon was able to get goods from all different places for his kingdom. But it also serves as a reminder that care must always be taken when drawing conclusions as to the true location of biblical sites. Okay, so that's a look at, a more complicated look at site. 10 minutes left. 10 minutes left? I got a lot on this show. You can see this map there. There's just a map of that orange little spot there is the tribal area of Manasseh. At that time, a survey was done and found something like 95 different archaeological sites there. It was more than they could ever get to. All the archaeological work in Israel is done under the auspices of the Israel Antiquities Authority. If you're going to build something there and you run into something, you better report it to the authorities so they can see if they can possibly start an excavation there and get it dug up, chronicled and cataloged. All right, this is called a Gilgal. Okay, now Gilgal means fortified camp. Okay, we all know that when Joshua and the Israelites crossed over from the Jordan toward Jericho, their camp at a Gilgal. Okay, and that's where they made their camp. But it also says that they went up to Mount Ebal and Mount Gerizim. And that's where they shouted out the blessings and the curses to each other. If you go there today and you stand on one of those mountains and have someone stand on the other mountain, you give each other birthday. It's a natural echo chamber. So anyway, so how did that? There's supposed to be a Gilgal up there where they camped also. And Joshua was supposed to offer a sacrifice on Mount Ebal after the Israelites destroyed it. The easiest approach how they got there. Actually, the Bible doesn't say this, but archaeologists have figured out that historians figured out they must have recrossed the Jordan River, went up north, and recrossed it again right opposite those mountains. The picture shows archaeologist named Adam Zertel found this Gilgal there. So I know it's hard to make out in the picture, it's a little dark, but there's like a round fortified camp there where everybody can stay safely while they're doing their work there, while they're making those curses and going up on those mountains. So it's a large walled enclosure. There's no evidence of permanent living quarters inside it. It wasn't used for farming purposes or to tend sheep, although no significant objects were discovered inside the walls. Pottery shards were found inside the enclosure that date the same time frame as the pottery found on Mount Ebal later. The enclosure made a protective campsite for the Israelites offering sacrifice on Mount Ebal and giving the blessings and curses. You know, the Bible even says in Deuteronomy 11:30 that Moses gave these instructions for locating Mount Ebal and Gerizim while he was still alive. He said, "Are they not across the Jordan in the land of Canaanites, opposite Gilgal, beside the oaks of Moreh?" This is another example of archaeology supporting the Bible. This northern Gilgal lies but 4 miles from those two mountains where Moses said you would find a fortified camp in that area. So that's just another way archaeology supports the Bible. Okay, let's look at some artifacts in different places. This will actually wrap it up. These artifacts are from a place called Caesarea Maritima. Caesarea Maritima is on the Mediterranean coast. In Roman times, Roman officials would stay there. Like Pilate actually had his palace and his headquarters at Caesarea Maritima, and he was just up there in Jerusalem at the time when they tried Jesus and crucified him, just because he always was there for the feast. They were always afraid something was going to happen in like a Jewish riot. They, from past experiences, things did break out there. So that's, these are the shipwreck was found there. And there's these statues. They found these statues. Now, there weren't any statues, parts of statues and parts of statues. You got faces, you got hands, you got full figures. The real thing about them, you can't really tell from the pictures, is that they're a rare example of metal statues. They're not made out of stonework or pottery. They're rare metal statues. And here are some, well, now there was a shipwreck found in the harbor. They did a lot of underwater archaeology. They found a shipwreck in the harbor, and those are just clusters of Roman coins that were found on that shipwreck. So, it's too bad they didn't find it a 100 years before, and they could have had some treasure for the treasure hunters. But these coins got put into storage. Oh, by the way, you can go to Israel and buy coins and stuff. You can buy all kinds of things. Casey's dad, my wife's dad, went there and bought a coin from the time of the Maccabees, just for sale in the store. So there's still a lot of grave robbery. Thank you. Still a lot of grave robbery going on there. People. So sometimes the archaeologists have to beat the grave diggers, robbers to the sites to be able to, do their excavation. Okay, let's go to what we call the New Testament just for a bit. This is, remember the story of Paul and the Ephesians? He and a couple of his followers went to the city of Ephesus, and they started converting people there, and these silversmiths got mad at him, because this was a city where they made a lot of money making statues for the local goddess called Diana of the Ephesians. And so they wanted to get him out of there, and they wanted to try him and put him in jail and stuff. So these are a couple of those statues that they would have made to goddess Diana that got Paul in trouble. And there's an inscription talking about the silversmiths and that they were in operation there. And here it is, if you read the story, you'll know that they seized Paul and Gaius and Aristarchus and dragged them into the local theater, and they were going to try them there, forcibly. They were able to get out and escape. There's a theater where they took them. There's an excavation that excavated that theater out. And they had those kinds of theaters all over the Roman Empire. Fortunately, Paul and his folks were able to escape, so they got out of there. All right, now let's go to Jerusalem for a little bit. This is the city of David. Right smack in the middle of the city, they excavated a area that I think might have been David's palace, his palatial complex. If you can see the area on the upper right that's got a red lines, that's a tower on one end of the tower. Now, this was all underground because they had to dig all this out. And there's one of the towers on one end of it, and there's a closer look at it. And there's a map showing the whole awful complex. There you can see, I think, the northern tower on one end, the southern tower farther to the left, and other areas of the complex. If you're close enough, you can read. Too far away from me, my poor eyesight to be able to read that. But there's a map that I should have put on. I'm going to go over here just to point to this.
You can't because that here.
Oh, that won't do it?
Well, it died. Here.
Thank you.
I'll turn that on in a second.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, can you hear me while I walk over here? Should be over here all the time. Anyway, here's the Gihon. This is the Gihon spring down here. All right, now here's the offal. That's the whole city of David thing, that little area there. It's us up against the Temple Mount. Okay? Now, there's the whole area of the hill going up, drops off, has a big drop off to the Gihon spring in the back, the Hebron Valley, where the Gihon hot springs, the water sources. But on the other side, it drops off in the Tyropoean Valley. Now, David would have been up here, that small area, not a big city area, really. That would have been the city of David. Don't ask me what LSS and SSS means, but that's that whole area there. But by the way, just 3 months ago, they found one of the latest discovery they found was the northern wall of the city of David that butts up right up against the Temple Mount. People always speculate about that because if you're going to attack the city coming down off that mountain, then the best way to get to it, you can just go down right into it. That's the easiest way to take it. So that's found wall. There's a ditch in front of that wall too for protection. So that's been an exciting discovery. All right. These are what are called bullae. Bullae was used if you want to send anybody a letter or seal a manuscript, any piece of parchment. Just you put some wax on the parchment and you heated it up, took the bullae and stamped it. So everybody had their individual little insignia with their names on and stuff. These are all they found there, and a whole bunch of them they found there in that palatial complex, city of David. And were the Babylonians there? Did that really happen? Babylonian arrowhead found in the city of David. Something that they did indeed take it over and destroy it. Okay, and we're getting low on time, so let's go on. This is something called the Magdala stone found in Magdala. Now, do we know who in the Bible came from Magdala? Mary Magdalene, right. I always thought that was the last name, but apparently it says where she's from. This is the Magdala stone. What its importance is go back over here for a sec. This is thought to depict the temple, pillars in the temple. So it gives us the only way we have any look at what the temple looked like in those days. So there's these are thought to be a set of pillars as it would have appeared in the temple. Couple on the right side here is the temple, thought to be the temple menorah. Okay. And let's see, got a couple more pics. That's called the Magdala stone. On the top is a rosette of it. Just not sure what that represents, but it thought to be something to do with the temple. And there's a good look at the menorah. Okay, this is what is called a mikveh. Mikveh is an area used for purification. It's a water. It's places like a pool of water down there, and if you're unclean, you're supposed to bathe. You can go down there and do it in the mikveh. Just about every town had one of these. Okay, this is the one for Magdalene. Now, the interesting about mikveh is that, remember in Acts, the first day of the church being founded, when Peter and his disciples had to baptize 3,000 people in one day? How did they do that? They probably ran them through the temple, had a large mikveh. They probably just ran them through that mikveh and baptized them. And there's the ruins of the first century Jewish synagogue at Magdala. Synagogue set up, you see the indentation in the middle is the actual synagogue there. You see what looks like a row, perhaps seats on either side of that middle area there. People sat on the sides of the synagogue, and the rabbi conducted the service from the middle of it. That's usually the women, I suspect, would sit on one side and men would sit on the other. Honey, we are ish, remember? Trying to hurry up. I couldn't do this without her. She sets up all the computer stuff for me. All right. Here's a coin depicting, as you see on the right side, the word letters N-E-R-O, Nero. that was found in Mount Zion excavation. And here's possibly on Mount Zion, another part of Jerusalem. They believe this was probably the remains of a priestly mansion where the priest might have stayed. Okay. All right, there's a stone in Jerusalem that names Marcus Pacius Silvanus Quintus Cornelius Gallius Antipas, governor of Judea, who had been governor of Judea in the 2nd century. You're familiar with the Bar Kokhba rebellion that took place in 135 and 137, that finally, when it was defeated, the Jews were finally totally kicked out of Judea and never allowed in there again. He was governor at that time, so there's proof of his existence, that he got that right. Okay, here's a little amulet discovered by an 11-year-old in the Negev, which is a desert area in the south of Israel. It's considered to be either a late Iron Age, which would put it about the time of the Babylonian control, or early Persian period, but it's kept for good luck, prosperity, protect against infant mortality. A little bit of paganism, perhaps, in Israel. Yeah, if you go to the Northern Kingdom, if you ever do this again, I'll show you. So you find all kinds of figurines and things up there. Up there, it's definitely they ever had pagans and pagan times up there. Okay, this is Timnah. Timnah is the area where Samson went to get his Philistine wife. That's the town they went to. This is called Slaves Hill in Timnah. Nobody knows why it's called Slaves Hill. I guess that they kept slaves there or something that's been lost to history. But the reason we're looking at there is what they found there. And that was this. This is a fragment of a rare purple fabric, 3,000 years old. It's the first purple fabric ever found. Now you know that that's the color of royalty that they would wear. And Jesus, of course, said he had a purple robe put on him. It's produced from the dye secreted in minute quantities from mollusks. It's worth more than gold. And there, David, Solomon, Yeshua all wore. It's the only, that stuff deteriorates. Fabric does not last. It's all deteriorated. They managed to find little pieces of there in Timnah. Okay, let's see. Did I skip one? No. Okay. This is actually, it's this tower. I don't know if you're one of the lesser known stories of the Bible, probably the story of Abimelech, who actually during the time of Judges reigned as king for 3 years, basically because he made himself king, and he had some supporters in a city called Shechem. This supposedly is remains of the tower where a lady dropped a stone on his head and killed him. So they found that, and reporting that is something that actually happened in the Bible. There's some figurines. This is from the kingdom of Cush in Africa, Cushite kings. Now the one in the middle rear, the tallest one there, in the middle rear is a statue of Taharqa, who's mentioned 2 Kings 19:9, is coming to the aid of Hezekiah against Sennacherib, the king of Syria, in 701 BC. Okay, here's an interesting one. This is the royal seal of Jezebel that they found. Jezebel, there's some, hard to see, the small print, there are some small letters in there that make up the name Jezebel. So they found that. And yeah, there's another mikvah. This is at Gethsemane. They had a mikvah there, and they put a Byzantine church over it, and that's the remains of it. They love to put churches over things that are important. If you've been to Israel, you'll probably notice that everything that's supposedly an important site, they put the church over it. This is Nazareth. It's hard to tell this. We've had to really excavate, been able to excavate the whole thing out. It's supposed to be like a courtyard house that's hewn from rock. And it's thought that Nazareth Creek Walk and rock-built walls, doors, and windows, it's thought that maybe, this is from Yeshua's hometown of So it's interesting that they would have rock houses there. A Geshurite fort from the city of Geshur from the time of King David. You know, David married a princess from here, Maacah, married David. And then they were the parents of Tamar and Absalom. Geshur is located in the Golden Heights. So there's a fort that they excavated that protects that city. Okay, here's one. This is a tombstone that you roll over the tomb. Except you can't roll it because it's in a square. Okay, you know, we always think that the tombstones is being round, so you just take it and roll it away. Well, it seems that the Bible, 3 Bible accounts talk about that rolling stone, but that John just says that the stone was removed. So there's a possibility that it could have been that shape, because they found them there, they were used. Okay, I'm going to skip forward a couple things here. There's just some artifacts that they found, daggers, and the one in the middle is a fenestrated axe. Fenestrated means they've got the 2 openings in there in the middle. And then a sickle sword. Those are some instruments of war. And here's another discovery they've made. Underground, they've been able to get underground around the area of the Temple Mount, and they found more of the wall. Okay. That this is attached nearly at the west wall where they were going crazy. They found more of the wall extending around another side. They had to go underground. This was underground. They had to dig it out. So there's 3 archaeologists standing there with that. Okay, this is a fun one. Remember how the Bible is in the Torah all the way through the prophets? They're always warning the merchants to have fair weights and measures. Well, this is purported to be a 2, what they call a gero, G-E-R-A-H, gero weight, only it's not. It's about 1.5. So this is one of the false weights that they were always talking about, because they thought that was interesting. Okay, the last hour I think that will show, this is one Larry's actually seen this, I believe. It was founded that in the Hezekiah's tunnel. Okay, it's an inscription. Apparently, when Hezekiah had his tunnel built, they had work party start from the Gihon Spring, and the other party started from the from the Pool of Siloam, going each way, meet in the middle. Well, this is an inscription that shows the 2 parties put up to commemorate the fact that they met in the middle and had completed the tunnel. And a few teenagers found that in 1880. They were just swimming the Gihon Spring. I guess if they floated out, they'd come loose and they were able to get it out. And of course, the Turks were in charge then, and they took it and they put it in a museum in Istanbul. Also known as Constantinople. And the Israelis have been trying for 100 years to get it back. It's a really important artifact for them. All right, well, that's all I have to show. I want to say one thing too. You notice we haven't talked a lot about Yeshua or anything found about him. Archaeology today, the world's a mess, right? So archaeology is a mess today too. You have as many secular archaeologists out there, and Israel is a very popular place to dig because of the history there. But they're just interested in the history. They don't necessarily believe that anything in the Bible is true. It's all just made up stuff. There's no Messiah. Some people didn't really exist. Moses was no Moses, no Exodus. The Israelites didn't come out of Egypt. So it's kind of a mess. And just like the rest of the world is these days, isn't it? Matter of fact, we call it biblical archaeology. A few years ago, there was a movement to change the name to Syro-Palestinian archaeology. Just take the Bible out of it completely. Fortunately, that was shot down, and most archaeologists continue to refer to it as biblical archaeology today. But if I had a wish list that what could be found out there, if they could find something that referred to Yeshua, okay? Wouldn't it be great if they found something that referenced one of his miracles or something, so that people could believe he was really Messiah, and the Bible and archaeology could prove that? What if you found a letter that said something like this. And there are tablets out there, so there could be something. Dear Yaakov, I saw an amazing thing yesterday. I went to hear Yeshua, the prophet. Toward evening, we were all hungry, and he made a few loaves and fishes last to let all of us, and I mean thousands of people, were fed. Could it be that Hamashiach has come? We're fed in Shiloh. Wouldn't it be great if we could find something like that and prove to the world that, that they need to get straight and come to the Lord. All right. Well, thank you. I hope this has been entertaining and informative as well. As I say, it was a real potpourri. If you'll have me back next year, we'll do Archaeology 101, and we'll just take a couple of sites and look at them totally in depth for you. We're really, really into this. Thank you very much. Oh, question? Do we have time for questions?
Yeah, I'm sure. Questions? Well, I got one. If nobody else has one right off the bat. I've heard from some archaeological students that carbon dating is kind of a joke among archaeologists, among honest ones.
Mm-hmm.
Can you make mention of what your opinion is of that?
Well, okay, the people date I think you're referring to dating things that, thousands and thousands of years ago, when the Bible only says the world is 6,000 years old. Well, and someone else was here was asking about this earlier. My opinion of it is that the world is older than 6,000 years. God remade the world. In Genesis verse 2, he said, can you quote me the verse, honey? Do you have the Bible? The verse?
The earth became...
The earth became Noah, it became void, right? The earth became void, and it was trashed. It was trashed probably by perhaps in a war between the angels and the evil angels. It got trashed, and the Lord had to remake it. And so that's why there are things that are older. I mean, they dig up these bones, and carbon dating has been proven to be pretty reliable, right? And they dig up things that seem to be thousands and thousands of years old. Well, somehow or you got to find a way to reconcile it. And I think that the best way I know is to use that verse, Genesis 1 and 2, I think is to use that verse.
Well, one of the things was that, one of the claims from one of the things online, documentary, was that they would send a fine to different places, and they get
different dates,
way different dates.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years versus thousands or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's why I just wondered.
Yeah, I'm not as particular scientist to be able to explain how that would happen.
Question, Larry?
Just to mention, last month or two, there was a website established, funded by a rich American, and there's an Israeli photographer trying to do high-resolution photography. It's IsraelArchaeologicalProof.com, and if you're ready to write, https://IsraelArchaeologicalProof.com, and I will try and get a piece of paper under the tripod and the camera back there so you can copy it again. It just looks to me like it's going to have a lot of potential. They had, a photograph of the clay bowl of Hezekiah, and the next one, slide down, I think was the pieces of one that is very likely from Isaiah the prophet. It was broken up, but it just looks like it's going to have a lot of potential to be of real interest. Show your friends, show yourself, so whatever.
Thank you for sharing that.
And that was IsraelArchaeology.com or Israel, say it again? Just not the whole thing, just the main part. Archaeological. I think there was Israel was in it too. IsraelArchaeologicalProof.com. IsraelArchaeologicalProof.com. Say that 8 times fast.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, there are a couple of sources out there that you can look up too. Anybody who's followed Philadelphia Church of God, they seem to have cornered displaying artifacts, as well as they put out a bi-monthly magazine just devoted to biblical archaeology. I recommend that, but another one is a YouTube website called Associate for Biblical Research. They have an excellent channel on various topics of the subject. I would recommend that as a possible source to look up if you want to look up further.
Most of my sources are a magazine called Biblical Archaeological Review. It started in the 1980s and is still published today. We've got over 200 issues of them. They tackle a lot of the archaeological issues and discoveries. And they also put out a great huge 5-volume encyclopedia that goes site by site, showing what's been done, the history of it, what they found there. That's where a lot of pictures all came from those two sources.
Anybody else? Yeah. Our cameraman has a question.
I think in our own trouble,
In terms of other like YouTube channels, like he was saying, there is a channel called Inspiring Philosophy, where they actually line up the traditions of the time with the specific Bible books that were written, so that way they can like prove that it wasn't just written later. It was actually written at the exact time it says, based on traditions, types of names, structures, everything like that, and it can line it up exactly with each book.
Right, that's why there's a lot of controversy, because a lot of people are saying, well, it was written hundreds and hundreds of years afterwards. Just a lot of myths and stories and whatnot. And, Moses wrote the first book of 5 books of the Bible, so that's that.
Anyone else? All right, we got one more.
I saw an interview of a Christian man with a microphone at the Wailing Mall speaking to some of the Jewish people who were worshiping there. And she said, how can this wall be a part of the temple? Because Jesus said in Matthew 24 to the disciples that not one stone would be standing on another that would not be thrown down. They said, this is why your Messiah, Jesus, is a liar. And now they're saying that the real temple is down in the city of David.
I'm glad you brought that up. I can give you a whole bunch of proofs as to why that is true. And if they wanted, they can build a temple today. And we do not have time to do it today, but if Bernard and Michael and his crew, when they're having the 2-hour Bible, if they will allow me a few minutes, I'll give us some more proofs as well. But this way you say is true. If you want to.
We got to get moving on.
No, I'm talking when you have your 2 hours Bible session. I can't.
Okay.
I didn't want to bring that up today.
Okay.
Time. Yeah, that's a very good possibility, and the whole thing boils down to the fact if they wanted to build a temple today, they could, because they hold the offering for the city of David was. And I'll tell you why they think. Slade probably knows too. Why we've come to believe that the Temple Mount was in place.
Huh.
Okay. So that's Monday.
I think so.
Monday at 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay, good. If I'm allowed to have a few minutes to for that, I'll lecture on that a little bit. This charming lady can help me out.
All right.
All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. I'm sorry I wasn't so much over time.